So what are UAPs? Are they aliens? Some terrestrial device that we have developed here on Earth? Or some other unexplained phenomenon? That has been the question we have had since Kenneth Arnold's sighting of a string of 9 shiny unidentified flying objects that he likened to saucers skipping on water on June 24, 1947. That fateful event brought us the term flying saucers as well as ushered in the modern UFO era. We could debate or discuss if there is evidence for any sightings and what evidence there is out there before this, but what is clear is that we have documented proof after this time that strange things have been occurring in our skies, and the question has always come down to, is it aliens, a secret government weapons program, or some other phenomenon? I believe this question should be taken one step further and ask, if it is a secret weapons program constructed by a terrestrial government, and they are withholding those world-changing technologies in secret from everyone else, including their own citizens, would it be, or should it be, considered crimes against humanity for withholding those technologies? That is what we will be discussing in today's video. Before we get to that question though, let us begin with the evidence for these technologies being for and against being made by a terrestrial government. And while the topic of these technologies being aliens, government, or some other explanation could be an entire 10-part series, we will keep these sections brief and give a quick rundown on these questions. We will start with the evidence against UAPs being developed and built by a terrestrial government. First off, let us state the obvious. All of the governments on Earth up to this point deny that these crafts were developed or belong to them. Second, UAPs perform with no visible propulsion system, and there is no evidence that such technological capabilities have been developed here on Earth yet. As of this time, all of the forms of propulsion that we currently use on Earth are thrust propulsion. The concept of thrust propulsion is that as you push a liquid or a gas through and exert it out the back of an object, it creates a force exerting pressure on the object in the opposite direction, and is usually generated through some application of Newton's third law of action and reaction. Also, the UAPs seem to defy the laws of physics as we know them today. The g-force that these UAPs experience in sudden acceleration and sudden sharp angle turns with no change in momentum against the gravity of the Earth would destroy any craft we know of assembled on Earth today. Another good example of this would be the ability to travel through air and water in the same craft without resistance. The famous Tic Tac UAP spotted by the Navy in 2014, as well as the Shag Harbor incident of 1967 being two examples of this. This is by no means all of the evidence for these UAP reports to not be the technologies of terrestrial governments, but a few of the key ones to take into consideration in this discussion. On that same note, we have to be honest. All of the terrestrial governments have denied that these reports of technologies belong to them. But to be fair, they have always denied it until they don't. Through these denials, followed up with eventual admittance by the terrestrial governments, the public has grown wary of what authorities say in regards to what they are capable of and not capable of. That combined with trillions of dollars spent in black budget and off-the-book programs since the start of the Cold War, it is no wonder the public has grown skeptical of what these governments say in regards to their capabilities. With all that being said, let us get to some of the evidence for UAPs being developed and constructed by terrestrial governments. When top-secret programs such as the U-2 spy plane, SR-71 Blackbird, and the F-117 Nighthawk went into development and eventual deployment, there would always be a spike of UFO reports made when people would see these new exotic airplanes. These programs being top secret, very few people knew about them, and the people that did were not going to say anything about them until they absolutely had to. Such as when Francis Gary Powers was shot down in his U-2 spy plane on May 1st, 1960, and the U.S. was forced to admit the existence of the U-2 spy plane program to the world. Next, look at the way that terrestrial governments have used propaganda to make the UFO and UAP investigation community to be looked at as a place where no serious science or people reside, at the same time using these communities to cover up the sightings that they were the cause of with their secret airspace program of the time. Agree with it or not, but the beginning of a new branch of military in the U.S. known as the U.S. Space Force has come into existence, and we can guarantee a few things from the U.S. military-industrial complex in reaction to this. They have a huge black budget that is developing craft and technologies for use in space for this new branch. They will invest more into this new branch of the military than any other space travel endeavors have to this point, as it is for the military and not for civil science and exploration. Also, these craft being developed for the Space Force will be different in ways we can only imagine to traditional aircraft that we are used to seeing in the skies. So this will create another cycle of reports, much like the previous top-secret programs. Just like with the evidence against it, this is by no means an exhaustive review of all the evidence for it. Just a few key points of evidence on why these UAPs could be developed by a terrestrial government. While we could argue for it being either one of these scenarios, there is just likely a chance that it is a combination of both of these factors that account for the UAP sightings around the world. And terrestrial government's top secret programs undoubtedly make up a large portion of UAP sightings, which leaves the real possibility of what we see as a combination of terrestrial government projects, true UAPs, and other phenomena. Let us put that evidence aside for a moment, because we might have our beliefs that it is a terrestrial government or that it could be something else, but we don't know the answer definitively at this moment. At least I don't. And let us assume that all of, or most of these UAPs that are reported that defy everything we know about physics and propulsion are developed and constructed by terrestrial government. What would that mean, and what impact would these technologies have on the world at large? So let us go through some of these world-changing technologies that we would have the knowledge and capability to produce here on Earth if these UAPs are from a terrestrial government. As a species, we would have the capability to build vehicles that could traverse through water, air, as well as enter and exit the atmosphere and interact with all of those mediums simultaneously without deterioration to the performance or structural integrity of the craft. And with no obvious signs of a propulsion system, these craft have the ability to manipulate gravity as well as give us the answer to what gravity actually is and how it actually works. The energy sources that appear to power these craft are not based on burning carbon and would be a fundamental revolution to the way the world views, produces, and uses energy. Then we have the advancement in material sciences, with exotic and new materials that would have to be discovered and created to deploy such a craft. There are many more capabilities that exist, but these capabilities and technologies alone would have huge implications and revolutionize space research, travel, and colonization, as well as just about every other science we can think of. The economic impact would be just as large, opening up the ability to deep space mine and making the most rare and expensive elements on Earth easily available and in large quantities. New energy sources that are clean could help reverse global warming and solve any energy shortage or dependency that we might have. The kind of technology demonstrated in UAPs used in a civil and economic way would propel us well into being a Type 1 civilization, almost overnight. With all of that being considered, let us get to the original question. If these UAPs are made by a terrestrial government, and they are withholding this technology from civil and economic use, would it be or should it be considered crimes against humanity? Here are a few key points for the argument that they are crimes against humanity. Continuing the destruction of the world to extract and burn energy resources that we no longer need to, thereby stopping the damage done to the Earth through those processes, including curbing global warming. Keeping shortages of energy and other raw resources rare and hard to obtain, which is the cause for most of the wars today outside of religion. Holding humanity back and preventing us from being able to move into a Type 1 civilization. Withholding new scientific theories that have been proven and tested from the rest of academia at large. These technologies and easy access to limitless resources would allow us to end poverty and material need for just about every person around the globe in a relatively short period of time if used in a civil and economical way, thus preventing countless deaths around the world in a host of different ways that is equitable for all and without the long-term sacrifice or worry of resources that prevails in our current limited resource mindset. These are just some of the reasons that we could or should consider charging a terrestrial government with crimes against humanity for withholding these technologies from us to use in a civil and economical way if they do exist. They are all very serious charges, and any excuse would be hard to justify. With that being said, Let us move on to the argument of why covering these technologies up would not be considered crimes against humanity. We understand that humans have always found a reason to wage war on each other, and it is not always over resources. Sometimes wars are fought over religion, the simple greed of the war machine, or just raw power from power-hungry people. With these factors in mind, let's go over why a terrestrial government would have a legitimate reason to withhold this technology from the rest of the world. To keep it out of the hands of a terrestrial entity or state that would use these technologies to commit mass genocide or worse atrocities against other sections of the population there is disagreement with for whatever reason. It would shift our economical systems in unpredictable ways that would be hard to predict. When nuclear weapons were created and introduced to the world, it created an arms race that presented the very real threat of annihilation to the human race and still does to this day. So would a wise government that knows what the nuclear revolution brought to the world repeat history and release technology that has the potential to be even more destructive than nuclear was and still is? Why would a government share military superiority with other governments and risk those technologies being used against their own citizens? These are all good arguments for withholding these technologies, but would they go far enough to justify giving up so much? The transformations that would happen to our civilization if we did have those technologies put into civil and economic use would be absolutely amazing and probably beyond anything in our wildest dreams. But the dangers that come with it can be even more horrifying on the flip side of that coin. The greater the energy, the greater the chance to change the world for the better, and just as true for the opposite, also creating an equally destructive capability that is possible to besiege the world in unimaginable ways. It would be a tough decision to make, and when a government faces a tough decision, they usually fall back on the default position, which in this case, the default position would be that these technologies are secret and no one needs to know about them yet in full. This also goes to the old adage, once the cat is out of the bag, you cannot put it back in. Just ask Dr. Oppenheimer. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.